Hello, this is Star and Light. This is Mary. I simply give a conservative perspective about the world around me. As I like to do in the beginning of the podcast, I talk about my audio platforms and social media. So let me start with social media. Social media, I will link those in this podcast. And my audio platforms, I am on iHeartRadio, I'm on Audible, Amazon Music, I'm on Pandora, I'm on Spotify for podcasters, Overcast, and I'm looking to grow to wherever you enjoy your audio podcast. I'm on that. So I am talking about education and the ideas about that and the issues with that. And I have my husband chiming in on this topic with me. So let's talk about this. So, what are your thoughts about education in America, modern education, all of that in general?
I think our modern education, I think the educational system is broken. I think that higher education is a Ponzi scheme that has been going on, that teachers proliferate and they benefit absolutely nil from it. You know, 90% of these degrees that are being handed out are pointless. You don't need them to do your job. You don't need it to do anything in the real world. And because they're worthless, it makes the value of the degree worthless. So, to start off, look at when we were in high school, it was, oh, you have to have a bachelor's degree. If you don't get a bachelor's degree, you're not going to be able to make any money at all, which was a lie told to us by our teachers. And then it's now, because everybody bought into it. Oh, I have to get a bachelor's degree. If I want to make any money, I'm going to have to get a bachelor's degree. There's so many people with bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree isn't worth anything. Now it's, if you don't get a master's degree, you're not going to be able to make any money. But it's this lie. It's this lie that teachers keep telling. I don't know why I was the only person in school who asked my teacher, well, you have a bachelor's degree and you complain that you don't make enough money.
Right.
You're making $40,000 a year as a teacher. You have to volunteer or take on a bunch of other roles as a teacher to be able to make more money. Be the cheerleading coach, be an athletics coach, be some other volunteer something, monitor some class or club or this or that, just for a little bit of extra pay to make a little bit more money. But you have to have a bachelor's degree to make money. Most of my teachers had master's degrees. And that's where it seems like a Ponzi scheme. It's like your entire educational life, it is stressed to you how important certain things are. And those things never turn out to be that important. Third, fourth, fifth grade, oh, you have to learn to write in cursive, because if once you get into high school, you won't be using pencils anymore. You'll have to use pens and you'll have to write everything in cursive. And so we learn cursive. I practice cursive. I get into high school and still use pencils. Not allowed to write most things in pen. Oh, and don't write in cursive on papers. Write block lettering so it's easier to read.
Mm. So, it's if it's not obvious, it's pretty obvious. We are talking about our observations and our opinions. So, this is what this podcast is about. And feel free when you hear this podcast. As I mentioned, my social media links. I would like to hear, and I would like to know what you all think about this particular topic. So, we were in high school and the mid 2000s and
It was early
early
2000s.
early to mid 2000s,
Yeah.
because we graduated in
Right.
2006.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
graduated in the mid 2000s, but we
right,
were in high school in the early
right.
2000s.
And then we were in middle school and the beginning of
The
the
turn of the century.
the yes, and then all of that. And I you see um it's just one of those things with me with education. It's beneficial, but the way that education is designed is, I don't think that it's really I don't think it's really done in a way that's proper, or that's really accessible in a way that's beneficial for people. And this is what I mean. So when I was in grade school, middle school, and all that, I had a very curious thirst for knowledge, and it just progressed and progressed because I had a lot of teachers that were very informative, but they wanted to help and help us appreciate learning. And then we had all these different incentives, being 90s kids, my husband and I. It was it was just a thing where, if, for instance, reading, we had programs where if you read at a certain amount, you would get rewarded for it. So, for instance, it was a thing called Book It, from what I remember, in my elementary school. And so you had to read so many books, and as you read those books, you would collect stars. So um, when you reached a certain level, your whole class would have a pizza party, and then we were all trying to outread each other. It was just really a fun experience. But on the other hand, there were some teachers that it was just, unfortunately pushing the narrative of not understanding the student and understanding an agenda. So, for instance, when I was in the fourth grade, um, we were assigned a particular research topic. So, it was um, really great that the curriculum saw, it's good for students to start learning how to research properly at an early age. So we were chosen. And so the teacher wanted us to choose what kind of college we would like to go to and the reasons why. So I chose a college, not only a traditional community college. It was a technical college to where you can learn a lot of skills. So I chose to talk about Lee College, and I was like, well, I think this would be beneficial for me because I can learn a lot of skills, and I still am very interested in technology, and I was like, well, um, I think maybe that can be the path to help me get to the next step to where what I'm interested in right now. And the teacher was like, well, that's all well and good, but why don't you try and go? Yeah, that's a little bit beneath you. Why don't you try and go for a school like, Harvard or think UT or things of that nature? I was like, okay. And it's that whole thing of speaking. I just see it as that idea of speaking with your own agenda, but not hearing what the actual person is saying to you, and not trying to listen and understand what the person is saying to you. And on a positive note to that, when I reached middle school, I had teachers um, test me because they noticed that I had some issues, and they were trying to figure out, excuse me, what was actually going on with me. And discovered I had dyslexia. So they explained to me, they said, just because you had dyslexia, this doesn't define you. So, we want to tap on this sooner rather than later, because we want you to be the best that you can be, and we don't want this to hinder you in any way. And it was very positive, and they just did all they could to make sure I understood better. I mean, I understood everything better, and I just um, um, was encouraged to learn different things and know that this doesn't define me. And they knew that I liked to write a lot and everything, and I was a very inquisitive person. So they, the particular teacher that taught dyslexia, and the surrounding teachers who uh, weren't particularly specialized in dyslexia, they all teamed together to work their particular class lessons to a way that was more relatable to me, and I greatly appreciated that, and that helped me have an even greater thirst for knowledge. So when I graduated from high school in 2006, and then went into go on to college and everything, I just saw a great shift, because it went to again, that whole thing, phoning in education, not really trying to have, a sense of education that meets the needs of the student. And it was very discouraging. And so I started out in a community college to help get through everything a lot quicker, so I wouldn't have so much debt. And then and that's the story I'll tell you about, the issues with student loans and how it's just a bad idea, and I unfortunately got into that, and it's just a whole thing with that. But let me continue on what I'm talking about. So going to community college route, yeah, it was okay, but it was just this whole thing where you're taking a bunch of courses that has to do with everything else but what you want to go to school for. And it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I
prerequisites.
yeah, prerequisites. And I was like, okay, I guess. So I just said, well, let me just go on. And then I was in hopes of going to a 4-year university, so that's what I did. Because when I graduated from high school, I had I had went through the route of applying to universities and everything, and the universities that I wanted to go to, they said that my SAT scores weren't high enough. So try again. Why don't you try and go to the community college route and just go through those steps, and then try again. And I'm like, okay. So I didn't take the route of victimizing myself and say, oh, they don't want me because of this, that, and the other, and I don't fit their narrative. No, I just took the initiative to say, okay, well, I just got to do this and work harder. So, and then I did eventually go to the university I wanted to go to, which was the U of H. And I don't know,
It's University of Houston, not University of Hawaii.
right, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Yeah, I was gonna specify that. But anyway, I appreciate you
Mm.
saying that. But again, it was pushing that the whole narrative, even with the students that I took classes with, and then I was working with, they're saying, "Oh, it's great to have a bachelor's degree, but it's not really competitive. It's just like having a high school diploma." And I'm like, "Well, what the heck? What?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, you talk with teachers that helped you. In school, I have memorable teachers, and but the biggest teachers that were a help to me in high school were the ones who taught me things that had nothing to do with college.
Yeah.
Mr. Sperry, Biggin, cannot remember his actual name because he wrote on the board Biggin
Mm.
and left it at that. And
Hmm.
I think it was Mr. Williams, that's what it said, and Mr. Morrison. And what's funny about these guys is Mr. Sperry was robotics, architecture, and a wood shop. And Biggin was metal shop, advanced wood shop, and automotive tech. Before I could start high school, they got rid of the automotive tech class.
Mm.
And then Mr. Morrison was a history teacher, but he was a Vietnam veteran at
Mm.
that. So, in the school I went to, you could take cosmetology. You had to pay to take cosmetology. You had to sign up, and they signed everybody up for like anybody who wanted, you could sign up for it. And it was a 2-year thing, and you had to wait until you were at least a sophomore to sign up for it. And you had to pay, and I think it was like $250 or something like that
Hmm.
to take cosmetology. But while they were offering that, which I think in the entire time I was in high school, 2 guys took cosmetology, and they were also bringing in students from other schools, surrounding schools, to come in and take cosmetology at our school. While they were offering that, they were actively getting rid of things that young guys would be interested in taking that could make them money. Automotive tech, they got rid of it before I was able to start high school. And then while I was in high school, getting ready to graduate, they were already talking about getting rid of metal shop, getting rid of wood shop, getting rid of robotics, getting rid of architecture. And they were constantly saying, you have to go to college. If you want to make something of yourself, you have to go to college. Mr. Morrison, who taught history, said, was the only teacher I had that said, college isn't the most important thing in life. You can find a way to make a way if you want. And he was very open about how he became a teacher without any type of degree. He was a soldier. He got drafted into the Vietnam War. And when he returned home, he became a teacher. And he was a PE teacher. And as things changed and the school started forcing it, he went and got an associate's in history and education, and then a bachelor's in history and education. But that's because the schools started demanding it, but the schools paid for him to go and do it. He never paid a dime for it. So he said, hey, There's other ways to go about getting these things if you really want them. What's interesting about it is every other teacher was, you have to do it, you have to do it, you have to do it. I had one teacher, he's memorable. I remember his name and I'll never forget it, Mr. Kaufman, who failed me in algebra and algebra 2 and geometry, because he was that teacher. If you don't know math, you won't ever be able to do anything. But 90% of your grade is going to be this little blue book and these problems that I write on the board every day. It doesn't matter if you give me the correct answer or not. If you don't write down the problem exactly how I wrote it on the board, and if you don't work out your answer in this page or in this blue book that I give you, and you have to have so many per page, I'm going to fail you because you're not doing the work. And it wasn't about learning the information. It wasn't about anything. It was about, can you copy what I write on this board into this little book, keep track of it, and turn it in at the end of the year. He didn't care if you copied someone else's work, as long as you wrote it down the right way. That's all he cared about. And he loved to give that. Everything in the world requires that you know algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. The more math you know, the better off you are. Otherwise, you're going to be a ditch digger. And I asked him about supply and demand one day. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, supply and demand, the laws of supply and demand say the less demand for something there is, the less supply it gets, correct? And the less valuable it is. If there's no demand for it, the value is very low. Then he said, yeah. And I said, and if the demand is very high and there's no supply, the value is very high. He says, yes. I said, so if everybody goes to school to get a bachelor's degree and there's no one to dig ditches, how much do you think that person who can dig a ditch is going to get paid? I was like, how many people do you know that spent $500,000 to go to school for 4 years? $250,000, depending on what school you went to, are going to get out and dig a ditch. The school was actively getting rid of learning how to weld, learning how to frame, learning how to do all these tasks that are in high demand now, by telling people, if you don't go to college, you won't be anything. Plumbers can easily make $200,000 a year. Easily. So in the same amount of time that some kids were getting $200,000 in debt, I had friends that didn't go to college that took a trade, that used the skills that we learned to become welders, to become framers, to become plumbers, never going to college, and then the 4 years after high school, making $200,000.
Yeah, and
or more. I chose the path of joining the military, and that was able to turn into credits. But what always got me was, in the military, it's the same thing. And in law enforcement, you have to have college credits. You have to have a degree if you want to promote past this rank and this and this. It doesn't matter what your degree is in, but if you want to become a first sergeant, you have to at least have an associate's degree. If you want to become this, you have to at least have a bachelor's, master's, doctorates. Eventually you're going to have or multiple master's degrees. And in law enforcement, we want our officers to have at least a bachelor's degree. In what? It doesn't matter. You have to have a bachelor's degree to promote to this rank. In what? It doesn't matter. You can have a bachelor's in underwater basket weaving for all we care. That is a common trope in the military. You can have a degree in underwater basket weaving. It's just as valuable if you have a degree in medicine. Why? Because they don't care about the degree.
so
Well, they say it without saying it. They tell you without telling you. They sit there and say, in law enforcement, in the military, it doesn't matter what your degree is in, as long as you have a degree. What they're saying, what between the lines, is your degree doesn't matter. We just want you to have it. We just want you to have a slip of paper. Doesn't matter because it's not important. The piece of paper that we say to get is what's important. And they're feeding into the Ponzi scheme. It doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit the military, you having a degree. They just get to say, oh, these people have a degree. And it increases prestige, this fake prestige that these degrees hold, when welders make a lot more than some doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Plumbers make a lot more than some doctors. There are welders and plumbers that are making a lot more than lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Not every lawyer is a millionaire and makes tons of money. It takes certain lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's funny. I remember applying for a job as a police officer, and the department that I was applying for says, well, we can substitute your military background for part of the degree, but we'd really like you to have at least an associate's degree. So I go to my local community college to try to get an associate's degree, and I said, well, I was told that y'all can take credits and or turn my military training into credits for a degree. Oh yeah, we can do social sciences, physical education, and all of these. What would you like to pursue a degree path in? And after converting my credits, what I got from the military, from the entire time I was in the military and stuff, into college credits, I had 18. I needed like 22 to get an associate's degree. And after going through the police academy and finishing that, that was another 8 credits. What got me was they said, oh, well, so to get a degree in social science, you're still going to have to take all these classes. Even though you have all the credits needed, you have to take all these classes still. You have to take these prerequisites and get this stuff out of the way. When in total, I had enough credits, but they couldn't have put them all towards one thing. And it never made sense to me. It's like, well, you're just grabbing for money. And that's what they're doing. They indoctrinate children and convince children that they have to do these things. All these people who are saying, oh, free college, free college, free college. No, not free college. And if you want to make somebody pay or repay your student loan because you don't feel you deserve it, make the teachers pay for it. What sucks is it's still coming from tax money, but take it from their pensions. Take it from the teachers' pensions, because the amount of teachers that I had that told me that I needed to go to college or I wouldn't ever make above $40,000, I wish I could go smack them in the face and say, hey, look at how much I'm making. No college degree, just military and my knowledge. The things I learned outside of school, the things I learned from my father, learning how to work on cars, the thing they told me was a waste of time. And then the amount of money I save, knowing how to fix my own plumbing, knowing how to do my own construction work, knowing how to run my own electricity, knowing all the things I learned that they said were worthless, that they deemed worthless by getting rid of it from school, have benefited me more and have made me more money than people that I know that went to school for 6 or 8 years and ended up dropping out, or graduated and work at a grocery store
Mm-hmm.
because they can't get a job in their philosophy major. They have a degree in philosophy, or they have a degree in political science, and they can't get a job.
So, to add on to this, two things I'm going to talk about. So, the whole thing with student loans is just it's ridiculous. When you step yourself out from it, why are you paying to go to school? That should be I know reward, not a punishment. Depending on which, even that's the whole thing. Even the sought after degrees, there's no guarantees. There's just like that. That's the way life goes. There's really no guarantees in life. You can put in the work and the effort, but it's not guaranteed. So, unfortunately, I went through taking out student loans, and it's just a beast within itself. But I think in the system of student loans, there's a better way of going about it instead of just doing this high interest thing and here, that, and the other, and thinking you need it for certain things. And it's just I just see it as it can be a better means than that option.
Right.
And hold on, and then also me, when I went to school, I knew what my goals were. So I knew that communication was important to me. I knew that technology was, and I knew that media was. So I was trying to figure out a way to merge all those things together. And the degree that I received kind of did that. But it's one of those things that I was already, the best way I can describe it is I already understood it, that theory and practice are completely different. So if for instance, let's say a, a house or something that's very concrete that you really have to have these set knowledge and skill in order to make it successful. So let's say the construction of a house, right? And you're hired to be the manager, or you're hired to be the project manager, or whatever role you're hired to do in this particular task that you went to school for. But you don't actually have the practical skills to make it right, because you just theorized everything in a controlled setting, right? So, that's the same thing in science. When you have a controlled setting, the the study, the the patient, whatever you're trying to reach your goal with this particular experiment, it goes the way that you want it to because it's in a controlled environment. But if you don't understand how to get out of a controlled environment and understand the practicality of, oh, this can happen, that can happen, and that can happen, if you don't have the experience of understanding that and seeing that firsthand, so many things can go wrong. Especially with the house, if you don't know the inside of the foundation of how to make the construction proper, or you don't know how to relate to people properly, or you don't know this, that, and the other, it's going to go wrong, and it's going to cost a lot of money to fix the damage. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's why engineers hate architects.
Go into depth about into depth about that.
So engineers hate architects because architects will make these things that look beautiful on paper, and they'll sell it to somebody.
Yeah.
And then they leave. Mm-hmm. And then the engineer has to try to make it real.
Yeah.
But gravity is a thing.
Absolutely.
Gravity is a thing that the architect doesn't have to worry about. Mm-hmm. The architect can design something that doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then the engineer has to figure out how to make it work. Right. And guess who gets paid the most?
Right.
Guess who gets millions of dollars for drawing some stuff on paper? And then you have people who went to school for just as long,
Mm-hmm.
who actually have a skill.
Mm-hmm.
They get paid less, a lot less, and they're the ones having to make it work. Why? Because there's more engineers.
Yeah.
Because there's more people interested in, I can make this work, I can do this, than there are architects. There's a lot of architects, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people that go to school to be architects, but guess what? That's like the people who go to school to be journalists,
Mm-hmm.
the people who think they're going to be professional NFL players.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to do it. You might have all the education to do it, but there's only so many positions for it. There's always more positions for engineers. There's more positions for construction workers and things like that. But you can still make a ton of money with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of these manual labor jobs and these hard positions, they're having a harder time getting people to fill those positions. And so there's one of two things that have to happen. You pay them more to build interest in it, or you automate it. Some things you can't automate.
Yeah.
And but it's the supply and demand. Something
Mm-hmm.
that they don't really teach in school as much as they should. You have a demand for plumbers. You have a couple of generations of people who were taught that learning trade skills is beneath you, just like the teacher said, going to a trade school is beneath
Mm-hmm.
you. And because of it, you need plumbers, so plumbers can make $500,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? Who would have thought, when in the 50s, when most people knew a trade, you took on a trade, you became an apprentice. Barely anybody was actually going to college. Most people were taking a trade and learning from somebody. You go back further than that, and it's even more prevalent. There wasn't as much demand for them because, there was a neighborhood plumber. And that guy, he never went hungry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the neighborhood plumber never goes hungry because guess what? There's always someone's pipe who needs to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
They might struggle sometimes, but you know, and that's the hilarity of it. You know, you can't always fill the gap.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell people you have to go to college or you won't do anything. In all honesty, the educational system should be, you learn your basics in elementary school. Come middle school, it's, hey, we need to start working towards a path, start figuring out things, and start learning different trades, start learning different, just getting your feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, it's okay, hey, we need to set you into a course. You got this first year. After this first year, you're going to have to start guiding yourself into what path you want to take. And while learning this and while pushing towards it, if it's something you need a degree for, pushing towards that. If it's not, if it's something that you're just learning those things. And then when it's okay, hey, so you're going to want to have to go to college to be sufficient in this. We're going to start showing you these colleges and help you figure that out. Or, oh, you want to be a welder? Okay, hey, you're going to need this. It would be a good idea to maybe go to one of these welding schools. It costs $3,000. We're going to start helping you save for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we offer these classes here, but this will get you more in depth and get more of those certifications. And while we're at it, yeah, if you want to be a machinist, there is math. You do need to know math. I gave Mr. Kaufman kind of a hard time about math, but yeah, sure, you need to know it, but you don't have to know all the intricacies of algebra, calculus, geometry, algebra 2, trigonometry, and all this just because you want to build engines.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know enough math to figure out the volume of a cube.
Yeah.
I know enough math to figure out the volume of a cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there are books that you can always reference.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have to write those books, but leave that to the mathematicians, to the
Mm-hmm.
people who all they want to do is math.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one area where it's broken. And you know what would happen? What would happen is the price of college would drop
Mm-hmm.
dramatically if less people were going to college. College would be more affordable if less people were going. I've already said multiple times that we've talked on here about if there wasn't football players getting paid, getting free educations for going to college, college would be cheaper. And it'd be the same with band and cheerleading and all these other things that really aren't going to turn into a career for most people. You get rid of those things, or you get rid of the funding for the students who go, and make them say, hey, we're not going to give you a scholarship because you play football good. Sorry. You want to come to college and you want to play football? Sure. You can go to college for something and you can play football, but you're not going to go to college because you play football.
Right. And there's a whole lot of issues with that because even though they say that it's not included into tuition or that thing or the other with that, it definitely helps to spike up the price and the cost of college.
But it is, though,
Right.
because you think about it. If you got 10 students, one student pays for their education system, for their education 100%. But however it is, with loans, parents, their own money, and then you have another student who is on a full ride scholarship from football. Well, who's paying for that? The school's paying for that. The school's saying, oh, hey, well, here. Well, how's the school going to pay for that? Oh, well, we'll increase tuition on everybody else. We've got this kid, they're taking out loans and doing all this. That's why the cost of education has gone up, because more people are going to college, even though they shouldn't be, even though they don't need to. More people are going to college, and you have a bunch of people going to college because they just want to play football. Hey, how about this? How about bringing in minor league football teams and let the NFL draft from there? And if you say, oh, well, when they get out of the NFL, or, after they have to know how to do something. Yes, exactly. That's something they should think about. If you're good enough to play it in the NFL, you're good enough to play in the NFL. But guess what? Not everybody's Tom Brady and has, 100-year career.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to think about it, because it's like that for everyone. Arthritis is a thing. You have to make sure you have backup plans. You have to make sure you have the knowledge of other things. In all honesty, I think, I'm a firm believer that part of our education system after you graduate high school should be civil service, whether it's join the military, be an EMT, work for the city in some capacity, you know, whether it's uh, sewage treatment, refuse, collecting refuse, collecting garbage, working, joining the military to help out, joining Peace Corps, joining the Merchant Marines, uh, going through uh, some type of community wellness program, to where for 2 years after you graduate, you're giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving back to your community, or to wherever you're going to go, or back to the government. Because one, you learn something. You learn something about yourself. You learn something about other people. Imagine all these people who think, well, everybody's as privileged as me because
Right.
they've never been around it, or only these people are less privileged than me because
Yeah.
that's all I've ever been told and all I've seen. Sending that, you know, that kid who grew up with parents that are making $400,000 a year never had to want for nothing. You know, send their butts down to a trailer park in Louisiana to do community outreach,
Mm-hmm.
to be an EMT out
Mm-hmm.
there and see how quickly they learn that, oh, you know what? It's not just these one people who got it bad. There's a lot of people who got it bad. Joining the military, you learn a lot of stuff while in the military. You learn how to do a lot of stuff in the military. But it's all things that you can turn around and utilize outside of it.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, and that's why I have so much admiration for people who are willing to serve their country. Now, this is a question I want to propose to you. Do you think if that was an element in college where it was a part of core curriculum, uh, you have to serve this type of, you can pick whichever civil service you want to take, but you have to do this in order to have your degree, instead of saying, learning a language and traveling is exponentially important, but on the basis of that, civil service is included into that. Do you think that can help break down with the problems we're seeing today with ideology and wokeness, as people like to say? And you think that can help
Yeah,
with?
because here's the thing: if you're forced out of your bubble
Hmm.
and you're forced into situations and areas where not everybody's the same as you and not everybody thinks the same as you start to understand you start to get a better grasp and a better understanding of the world around you.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, it's not like that anymore because these people are able to stay in their bubbles forever. And that's why the military is getting woker and woker. It's because they stay in their bubble and they stay surrounded by the people they want to be surrounded by the people they choose to be surrounded by.
Right.
And then they, slowly they climb up in this bubble and then they achieve power. And then it's, now I'm going to force everyone else to think this way, to be this way, instead of just saying, because they've never been around it. Guess what? Most conservatives don't care if you're gay. Most conservatives don't care if you're trans. They don't want you messing with children.
Right.
They don't want you telling children. They don't want you teaching their children. You want to do it? Do it. The military's policy of don't ask, don't tell was the best thing ever because it's don't ask, don't tell. It wasn't don't ask if you're gay, don't tell if you're gay. It was don't ask, don't tell. Guess what? I couldn't ask you if you were straight. I couldn't tell you that I was straight because me telling you I'm a straight man is a violation of don't ask, don't tell.
Hmm.
Just as much as you saying I'm a gay man would be a violation of don't ask, don't tell.
Hmm.
Because you weren't supposed to talk about your sexual inhibitions.
Right.
Sure, people did, and yeah, sure, it wasn't as frowned upon for straight people, but that is an error in enforcement that should have been addressed, not the pendulum swung too far.
Hmm.
But I think the solution to it, because a lot of people are, well, it takes so long to get a college degree. I think you shouldn't be eligible to actually receive your degree until you've completed 2 years of some form of civil service.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
again, it can be volunteering. It can be as a fireman, EMT, law, some type of law assistance, because I'm not going to say law enforcement because there's a lot of training that goes into that. But law assistance, community enforcement of, hey, I'm not police, but I'm going to actively work in this community to better it. So if I have to drive around and be aware and watch things, not interfere, not stop, not do anything, but be a professional witness, then I'm going to do that to help lower crime. I'm going to drive around and I'm going to be the best witness I can be for when they come in. I'm going to reach out and be involved in communities and talk, because 90% of the time, that's what helps prevent things. When I
Mm-hmm.
was a police officer, it wasn't getting into fights, pulling people over, and, you know, slamming people against the wall that ever got any information that I couldn't get by going down to the basketball court and playing basketball with the people there in uniform, hanging out. And then, hey guys, y'all know anything about this house that got broken into a couple of days ago? Oh man, no, you know we can't say nothing about that. It's like, hey, look, I know you can't. I know it's an issue, but it's an issue for everybody. Because if it happens to your neighbor, it's gonna happen to you. And then every time someone would come up, hey, you need to check out this guy. Hey, you need to go check out this house over here. Hey man, you know, don't bring me into it, but there's these guys down the road that are, they scare me. They're this. Oh, okay. Keep an eye out. Hey, I heard that something might be going on at that where they're building all those new houses over the next couple of nights. Y'all might want to keep an eye out over there, because they trust you.
Mm-hmm.
They understand. They're more likely to tell you things if people can trust you.
And I think that to add on to this with defunding police and everything of that nature is a ridiculous concept within itself. I think that to actually humanize it, understand what you're actually wanting, and then executing what the effects of that, and just humanizing the aspect of um, the placement of cops and the necessary need for cops, and to know that there's a beneficial relationship with cops can help with these ridiculous notions of thinking that um, defunding cops is a viable source for protection. I mean, what it?
I agree. I, I have a love hate relationship
Yeah,
with law enforcement.
yeah, it's one of those gray things. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But
I absolutely understand that, but at the same time, I'm not trying to cut you short. But at the same time, it's just I just have me personally, I just have that perspective of appreciate what you have, and just
100%,
you know
I agree. I am not, I'm all for police.
right,
I'm all for public servants,
right, yeah,
people
mm-hmm,
who serve the public.
absolutely,
The Constitution grants all people various rights and liberties.
mm-hmm,
The Supreme Court has ruled that the police don't have to protect you
right, yeah,
at all. It's
mm-hmm,
not their responsibility to protect you.
mm-hmm,
It's your responsibility to protect you, not the
mm-hmm,
police. The way I see it, there should be different agencies that cities and states are required to have that are completely separate from one another. Not internal affairs, but external affairs. There should be cities that and counties and states should have agencies whose sole purpose is to investigate law enforcement officers.
yeah,
People have to worry about, and it's not everybody. Most people go their entire lives without ever having to deal with police. But
mm-hmm,
sometimes you have bad dealings with police. As a former police officer, I worked with a bunch of bad police. My first department that I got hired at, before I'd even been there a month, I was asked by the city attorney to write a report, and to testify, if need be, about the chief of police, the lead detective, and 3 other officers
Mm.
who were stealing money,
Mm.
stealing stuff from evidence, assaulting women,
Mm.
stealing time off their time card, losing, quote unquote, losing drugs
Mm.
that were supposed to be seized,
Mm.
holding guns to minors, kneecaps and heads and all kinds of stuff. Different things that I had seen and that other officers that I worked with had seen. And there was 2 things I learned. You know, there are people who are more than willing to help out because they think they're doing good, but there's also people who are doing it because they want their turn. They know if they get rid of these people, they're in a position to where they can move up and they'll get their turn. And that's exactly what happened. I wanted to do the right thing. A couple of other guys I was there with wanted to do the right thing. The rest just wanted their turn. The first guy to go was the first person to make the complaint to the city attorney.
Wow.
And after these guys were gone, the interim chief came in, who was just a patrol officer. He supposedly worked for California Highway Patrol and was SWAT and all kinds of stuff in California back in the day, back in the 80s, you know, and was just an officer, was just a patrol officer. And the thing was, it was a smaller town. You know, if he had that much experience and stuff, why didn't he go get on at Fort Worth, you know, in a bigger town? But that's besides the point. They make him the interim chief. And then after a month, they make him the chief. And 2 days after he got put on as the no longer acting chief of police, but just as the chief of police, sworn in as the chief of police, he fired the first guy who brought up all the problems.
Wow.
Then he fired one of the other ones. I saw the pattern. Me and one of the other people who's, you know, swore witness, we left to another department. And, you know, in that time of us leaving, 2 other guys who were there got fired by this chief. You know, and this is over the span of about a year, 2 years of all this happening, of bringing in sergeants and lieutenants and firing them a month or 2 later because they can't be trusted, until he found just the right people. And after leaving, a buddy of mine from another department says, you know, it's just as bad as it was. It's probably worse than it was. They're doing all the same things. And, you know, it was only a couple of years before he was gone, too. And that's just how it is. And, okay, sure, get out to another department, and it was just as bad. And that's when I decided, you know what, this isn't for me. If I'm going to have to be fighting against this the entire time, plus having this stigma on me, I lost friends. I lost friends since elementary school. No longer talk to me because I was a police officer. Having people just hate you just because the job you choose to do. No, you know, some people didn't care whether or not you were trying to help. Some people, you're in uniform and you just try to talk to them, just, you know, hey, how's it going? You get a big FU and they walk off, and it's like, okay, sure. You don't, and there are people who have valid reason not to trust police, but I think every city, state, county that's putting out law enforcement agencies should also be putting out people to investigate law enforcement agencies whose sole responsibility is, if there are police officers out on patrol to try to stop traffic and keep people from violating traffic laws and things like that, there should be people who don't work for the police department, who are their own police department, just solely doing nothing but investigating them. And that's how their metric is tracked. you know, and then it is us who watches them. So if you see a bad officer getting jammed up by one of these guys, you say something about this, and then that person gets jammed up. We have checks and balances in our government, but we don't have any checks and balances in our cities and our law enforcement. They say, oh, there's an internal affairs. Oh, yes, we investigated ourselves and we found we did nothing wrong. And, I don't think the average Joe police officer should be equipped better than most of our soldiers. To me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's the type of thing, if you don't have law enforcement, you'll quickly find that you desperately need it. If you have too much, you'll quickly find that you're being oppressed by it. And it's finding that balance, which can be hard. But again, it's one of those things. They make police officers get degrees, and they don't care what the degree is in. It doesn't help them be a better police officer. That degree that they got in communications doesn't help them be a better police officer. It doesn't help them solve crime. It doesn't help them figure out if the person is a criminal or not. It doesn't help them know when or when not to shoot, when or when not to punch, use force. None of it helps. How about if you want to say, hey, every police officer, we want our police officers to have a degree. Instead, you say, we want our police officers to have a bachelor's degree in constitutional law.
Right.
So that they know the Constitution and what you can and can't do. And what's funny is most cops know, they're told, like, hey, this is not a stop and frisk, or this is not a stop and ID state. And they'll say, give me your ID, and try to force you into it. And the Supreme Court says, oh, yeah, they can lie to you. Police can lie and say, yes, you have to. And if you do it, even though you're under duress, or because the police officer lied to you about whether or not you had to, and you do it because of that, well, you still chose to do it. So it's, risk getting arrested or comply. But yet, if a police officer tells you to kill somebody, or else he's going to arrest you for something else, well, that you should have known better. What? How does that work? Like, if a police officer tells you, sell these drugs to this guy, or else I'm going to arrest you for this other thing, you're violating the law. And you can say, oh, well, entrapment. Well, you still have to prove that. And police officers are able to turn off their body cams, mute it, all kinds of stuff, but yet get mad when people try to film them. Again, it's a love-hate thing. I understand the need for police. I just wish police were better. I wish these cities would get rid of this stupid, they have to have a bachelor's, and spend more time training the police themselves, or more time vetting the people they choose to bring in as police, because that's a lot of it.
Do you think, well, this is my perspective about it. Do you think if the whole arrogance of, unfortunately, that can go along with education, if it was delved into it's good to have your education to elevate your mind and everything, to pursue your career goals with this education, but let's keep in mind, let's keep a moral compass. Let's try to see the moral compass in this. Let's try to see the overall purpose and what you want to do, and just to see the, instead of, I'm this, melving it into, I'm better than this and that and the other because I do this, because I am this, and that's I think it just it just it's maddening to me because education is I see it as freedom, and it's just maddening to, you know, tying arrogance with education. Do you think, you
Oh,
know? Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
But it's everything, though. It's not just,
Right.
it
It's not
is,
just education.
it,
It's just
you're right. It is education, but it's status more
right.
than anything. With
Yeah.
status comes ego.
Hmm.
And it takes a serious person to check their ego themselves, or to have been in a situation to where they learn, like, okay, hey, this isn't the most important stuff. Because again, that's what it is. You get these people, you see it everywhere. You see the people who buy a house, and then some people around them rent out their houses. You're just a renter.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
hey, you bought your house because your parents, or when you got married it was a gift, you know.
That's not always the case, but
Or
that's it's a
right,
whole lot of reasons. But
it's
but
usually
just
older people, but it's
right.
like, you, like, seriously, you, most of the people who are like that never rented a house. They only
Hmm.
ever bought a house.
Right.
They bought a house and they've lived there, and it's, oh, they're just renters. It's like, dude, they're just trying to get by. Like, just because you bought your house at, doesn't make you any better than them, but they think they're better because they bought their house. It's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we're homeowners, and I don't give two craps if the person next to me is renting or not, as long as they're kind, quiet, and leave me alone. You know,
Yeah.
but you
Sure.
see it with education.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got a master's degree, and because I have this degree in this, I am an authority on it, and there's nothing you can tell me. It's like, what does that have anything to do with this? Perfect example. All right. So I was on a roof when I was in the military. I so I went to basic training, joined the military at 17. Went to basic training the summer of my junior year in high school. Did all my basic training, flew back, had to go to school. Like, I got off the plane, got in a cab. The cab drove me to my high school. Took Finish out the day in school, and then went home. Like, that's how tight it was. Because basic training went up. I actually missed the first 3 days of school, which was its whole other thing too. But I missed the first 3 days of school. And after I graduated, I did everything I had to do, graduated. I went back to training to do my advanced training. While there, because I left the day after Christmas, December 26th, I had to get on a plane to go back to training, but there was no one there. Basically, everybody was on, uh, man, I can't remember what they call it, Exodus leave. All the training posts were on Exodus leave. Basically, everybody going home for Christmas and New Year's. So it wasn't until after the New Year's that anybody was going to be back. So while waiting, there was a few other people who either just didn't have homes to go back to or just chose not to. They, drill sergeant comes in and he says, "Hey, there's this organization that we know of that are roofing a house, and they've only got 2 weeks to try to get it done. And would any of y'all like to go and help? It'll get you off post and stuff like that. Go roof this house." And I did things like that when I was in high school. I volunteered for a church group and went and roofed a house in Tennessee. And I was, yeah, hey, I would like to do that. I've got knowledge and experience roofing. My dad was a roofer. He taught me how to do it. I've actually volunteered for things like this before. Oh, okay. And so we get out there, and they're like, hey, just, help out, just do, see what they need y'all to do and go about doing it. So, okay. And they were like, hey, does anybody here have an issue being up high? I was like, no, hey, actually, I know how to roof. I don't mind going up. So I climb up onto this roof, and I noticed that all the shingles were laid down straight. They were laid down end to end in a perfect pattern. They didn't edge the roof. They didn't. Normally, what you do is you take a shingle, you slide it over until about half or 3/4 of it is off the roof, and you cut that piece off, and you set it to the side, and then you start full shingles. And then when you get to the next line, you use that one that you cut off on the end to start it, because that creates an overlap.
Continue, please.
So I notice that they're all lined up, and I say, hey, I don't know who laid these down, but this is going to leak in this area right here because they're all lined up. You see these lines, they're all in a line, so water's just going to run straight in that channel and actually tear up the felt paper and stuff, and it could cause a leak. And the guy says, I don't know who you think you are, but I've got a bachelor's in architecture, and I'm going for my master's, and by the time I graduate college, I'll have a doctorate in architecture or a PhD in architecture, and this is how you do it. I said, I'm just a guy who grew up with a roofer as a father, who had to go and work on the roofs a lot of times during summer break to help out. So if you look on the back of that package right there, it actually tells you how to do it. And then I said, what do you need me to do? Just get down. And I see him turn the package over, look at it, read it, see that it said I was right, rip up everything, throw it down, and start trying to do it the right way. So I asked the guy on the ground, hey, what do you need me to do? And he was like, well, they said you know how to roof. I was like, yeah, I do. That guy told me to get down. And he was like, well, if you know how to do this, like, this is the whole reason we needed help, because we've done this like 3 times and they keep just blowing off. So I go back up on the roof. I was like, he told me to come up here and show y'all how to do this because I actually know what to do. They were using the wrong nails. They were just pulling. They thought the shingles were just supposed to stick to the roof because there's a strip on the back where there's tar. And it's supposed to help the shingles kind of stick together, but not actually stick to the roof. And all they were doing was pulling them off, setting them on there, and putting one nail through the middle and lining them up dead straight. Showed them how to do it. We helped out that whole day. Got the whole roof done in a day because there was like 20 of us. And after I showed everybody how to do it, it went quick. And then after everything was done, we cleaned up, we left. But this guy thought because he had a degree in something that was closely related, that no one could tell him anything. But it's because he was never told, you're wrong. He thought that that gave him the authority and some type of supremacy over anyone else and everyone else, because he had a degree. And that's what a lot of it does. These people only ever see the education system, and when they leave, they think, well, because I've done all this, I am now superior to these other people. And they don't know. I mean, I work in the performance automotive industry. I get tons of people who come in and ask a question, or they'll call and they'll ask a question, and I go to give them the answer. Well, I've been working on race cars my whole life and I've never heard. So why are you asking? Well, because I don't know. Exactly. You don't know. If you don't know, acknowledge that you don't know. listen to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the advice I'm giving. If you don't want to believe my advice, that's perfectly fine. I highly suggest you reach out to other resources and see if they support what I say or don't. Don't just trust me, because I could be wrong. But it took a lot of, I grew up knowing, learning, making mistakes, and acknowledging that, okay, hey, I don't know everything.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever wants to admit that they don't know everything, but you don't know everything. No one knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be wrong.
Yeah.
To err is human. You can be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's best to say, hey, I don't know. Hey, I understand. As far as I know, this is how it's done. You might want to check that. But as far as I know, this is it.
And down to this, if you look on the outside of everything, that just take a telescope and say, look back. Answer this for me, and I'm gonna, feel free, listeners, to comment on this. Now, why is it, you reach master's, PhD level, you go in the job force, if you weren't already working, which I'm hoping you were. Anyway, propose for the job. A lot of times you get denied. Why? Too much education.
Right.
Or they don't feel like they see you have all this masters, this, that, and the other. Oh, it's this flag that comes in their head sometimes, the hiring manager. Oh, we probably don't have enough money to hire this person, or we don't have the sources to think we could keep this person on to our company.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. We want people who are educated just enough to where they're not a threat to me.
Yeah.
I want you to be educated just enough to where I don't have to worry about my job. And, oh man, you got all this. Why are you applying here?
Yeah, so you look at you sideways, but
right. What? Why? Why are you applying here? And what it is, they're nervous about their own status and position there, because if they hire you and you're better than them, then you'll take their job, or you'll get promoted before they do. As well as, well, you've been in college this whole time, you have this degree, you have all this debt. Can we really trust that you're going to stick around? And, is this just a temporary thing? And that's what they're worried about. They're worried about you have this and you're only trying to get a job there to work temporarily until what you really want and what you're really hoping for comes available, so you can move on to it. That's one of the things that I noticed, and that I remember from school. They used to make announcements over the intercom when teachers would pay off their student loans. But the teachers who were getting paid $40,000 to $50,000 a year, some of them up to about $60,000 a year, depending on how many things they volunteered for and different things they taught. These teachers were also being compensated, with the school taking resources to pay back their student loans for them. So, in part of getting paid every month, they were getting their student loans paid towards by the school, by the school district. And that was something that they advertised in hiring, that if you get a job here, we will help you pay back your student loans. They were telling students that if they went to college and got a degree, got a teaching degree, and came back to the school that they got their high school diploma from, that they would pay back 50% of their total student loans. to try to get students to come back and work back for the school that they graduated from. And all of this, it's like we've heard nothing but y'all complaining about how horrible it is to be a teacher here, and how y'all don't make enough money and all this. But you want us to do that? You want us to go and get all these student loans and all this stuff to come and work here, where y'all openly state constantly that you don't get paid enough? Why do people become teachers? I mean, they do it. I know why a lot of people, they think, oh, every summer off I'll have 3-4 months out of the year just to do whatever I want, all this free time all the time. And they complain, oh, I just don't get paid enough. You knew you wouldn't. All teachers do is complain about how much they get paid. So why are people going to become teachers? Because it sounds good to have all this free time. And in actuality, teachers don't have it that bad. Teachers aren't underpaid. Oh, well, we do so much. We're raising the next generation. No, you're not. Not if you're trying to constantly brainwash them that they need to do what you did, what got you into the position you're in, to have a better life, instead of telling them, there's other ways to make money. The best way to make money as it stands right now is to take a trade. And eventually, people are going to take trades to where all the trade things are full and trades aren't making as much money as they were, and going to college can be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like that now. And yeah, it's that balancing act. It reminds me, I remember the commercials, 1-800-BARTEND, to go to bartending school because of that movie Cocktails.
Right.
Everybody was trying to go to bartending school. I remember being a kid and my brothers and their friends, I'm going to go to bartending school. I'm going to go because they thought they could make a ton of money doing it. That ain't true. My school was so hard pressed saying college is so important. They took us to a college that got sued because they were not actually teaching curriculum. They were having students get federal loans, taking the money, and then not actually teaching them anything. Just giving them slips of paper that says they have a certificate or they have an associate's degree and all this stuff. And it's like they got sued. It was a big thing. It was, it wasn't like it was a small little community thing. It was a company that had training academies, and you could get an associate's degree. You would graduate with associate's degree is what they said. And they had video game development and all these things that seemed really interesting, that, computer web development and IT stuff and all this stuff. And they're like, oh, well, with these, all you have to do is 2 years and you'll get an associate's degree and you can make $120,000 a year. It's like, well, I can make that as a welder on the oil rigs too. Sure, it's long hours. Sure, it's a bunch of this. But the thing is, you get experience. You bust your butt. You get tons of experience. You learn how to do it. And then you go and you start getting the more cush stuff. You work yourself into the position you want to be. So you become a welder. You learn how to fabricate and all this stuff. And then you become a freelance fabricator. And you make money that way. But people don't do that. I know tons of guys who, out of high school, got jobs in construction and went and learned everything they could about construction, and then started getting loans to start their own construction company because they knew how to do the construction, get a small crew, and it's easy to run. You don't need a master's in business to run a small construction company. You can run a small construction company, make great money, and with just the knowledge you learned from high school, if you paid attention, and everything you learned about doing construction. Because it's all experience. You just pay attention. Talk to people. Talk to your bosses. Well, when you're doing this, people will teach you.
Yes.
If you show interest in it, a boss will teach you. Especially when things, you're relaxed and they see like, oh wow, this guy, he really wants to know this. They will teach you. They don't know why you're trying to learn. And because everybody knows, well, I'm going to retire someday. Well, let me take this kid under my wing. But, that's the things that are getting lost to everything. The idea of, let me take this kid under my wing. Let me help this guy out. I know managers who didn't want anybody else knowing what or how they did something because they thought it gave them job security. And when it came time for them to leave, whether they promoted up in the company or just outright left for a different or better position, the person who stepped in couldn't figure out how they did anything. Whether they hired somebody in new or the next person, because they thought they were creating job security. But sometimes you just put yourself in a corner of, well, we can't promote you because nobody else knows how to do your job.
Right. That's true. Very true. Do you have any ending comments?
I would say to anybody who's young enough to be thinking about college, think about what you really want to do. Think about what you can do to make the best living in your life. What are you good at? What are things that you're interested in? Because those things can make you money. And if it's something that you don't absolutely 100% need a degree for, don't waste your time and money going to college. If you want to get some type of a degree, go to a community college. Get an associate's in what you're trying to do. Some community colleges, you can even get a bachelor's. Take your time. Do it part-time. Do it little by little so that you can make your money and get your experience. And then use college as the secondary, as the buffer, as an investment, not as the hope that after you're done, you will be able to get something. Build yourself first. Right. If you like working with wood, if you like building stuff, get a job on a construction site. Get a job where you're actually doing it. Because that's 10 times more valuable than anything you could learn in college. If you like working on cars, get a job as a mechanic. It will be hard, but that's the thing about being young. You're young enough to do it.
Right.
You can have free time when you're older, when you're better set. Build your life, build your family, build the things that are important to you. But if you want to be a mechanic working on cars, get a job at a mechanic shop. You can get a job as a helper. Everybody always needs good helpers, good gophers. Learn, have them show you stuff. And then you can go to ITT Tech. You can go to one of these trade schools where you learn more in-depth stuff. And then you take the knowledge that you learned firsthand, plus the knowledge that you learned in the school, and then you start building onto that. Whether you end up opening your own shop or whatever path you take, you don't have to go $1 million in debt. You don't have to go $500,000 in debt. You don't have to go $250,000 in debt to get what you want. If you don't want something that absolutely requires a degree, don't waste your time. If you don't want to be a doctor, a medical doctor, if you don't want to be a lawyer, If you don't want to be an engineer, don't waste your time taking classes to learn how to do these things. If you want to work with your hands, if you want to be an automotive engineer, you can learn those things in college, but it's best to have firsthand knowledge about how cars work, about working on cars, physically working on cars, because the people who make the best cars are the people who once had to fix cars. Ask any mechanic you know. The worst thing about working on some of these new cars, there's no room to actually work on them. And that's because the people who designed them never actually worked on a car before in their life. That's why cars went from having tons of ample and excess space to actually get down in the engine bay and work on it, to special equipment and machinery where the engine's put in and the car is built around it, because they don't ever expect anybody to work on it.
And then to add on to that, I feel very interested in things of visual design, web design. Start out, because my close friend growing up, she, what she did was she was very visually inclined to and interested in things like that. So am I. So what she did was she wanted to learn web design, all these different things, and she asked the teacher who was over the web design of the school, can I help out with this? Can I learn this, that? And she let her, because she was very impressed with how interested she was. She showed my friend. She showed her portfolio on what she's done. Do things take.
Yeah. It's curiosity can take you tons of places. One thing, never work for free.
Right. That's it. And it's unfortunate that happens a lot of times with internships. They say the experience is the pay, but you need to get paid.
They'll do that while you're in college. Oh, well, you need to gain the real life experience. You can get paid to gain that real life experience. You could have been getting paid to gain that real life experience beforehand, because they're always hiring in these places, and you get a job in these places for something completely unrelated, and pay attention, watch, be observant, ask questions. And while you're going to school, when it comes time, you need to go and take this internship at this place so you get real world experience. Well, I already work there. I already know this, and this. Hey, they want me to take this. They're saying I need real work experience in this. Could I start shadowing you in between my task here, or start, could you start showing me the ropes on this, or is there any way I can help you out with this while handling my task here? Because you shouldn't ever work for free unless it's charity work. Unless you're giving back to those who've helped you, whether you saw the help or not, or giving back to people less fortunate, you should never give yourself to a company for free.
I appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. So we're reaching the end of the Hovering Light. And as I like to say, tune in and turn up.